All right, I don't think many people have thought about this, certainly over the last few weeks, but think of it this way. And if you're in Texas, you can really appreciate this. The political aspect of this. Has legalizing sports gambling in most states backfired? Stuff you start to take in, I think a lot of people are going to say, yes, it has. Let me do that again. Has legalizing sports betting in most states backfired? There's been a significant push in the state of Texas. I mean, to think that you would one day see the great Richard Perry, the Davy Crockett of our time, Rick Perry, out there pushing for legalized gambling because he's getting paid to do so. It's new territory. But there's been a significant push in the state of Texas the last two legislative sessions. But think about this. Will the recent scandals give the anti-gambling people, which I don't think it's the majority, but it might be the majority that matters politically, will it give them more ammo? Do the scandals, think of it this way, do the scandals that have been taking place in sports betting take it off the table entirely? Gambling, in case you don't know this, became a state-by-state issue in 2018. So the Supreme Court opened the door and said, listen, this is a state's issue that states can decide if they want to legalize gambling. And most have done so. 38 states in the District of Columbia have legalized sports betting, not in Texas, not in California. Now, you could say, well, that's coming. I don't know that I agree with you. I do agree that there's been a push, certainly been a push in the state of Texas, but I think you do have to take in the most recent scandals, and I'm wondering, when we sort of walk our way through this stuff, if many of you say, you know what, I don't know, maybe it's not such a great idea after all. The Shohei Ohtani controversy and others has a lot of people now wondering and asking the question, has expanded gambling created more problems than it's worth? Right? Just in the last 2.5 weeks, you've heard more gambling controversies with players and coaches than ever before. In the past 6 months, you've probably heard more than ever before. Take this past week alone, last 7 days or so. How about this? I mean, it doesn't take you long to find these. A Jacksonville Jaguar employee is found guilty of stealing $22 million to fund a gambling problem. Now, it's not a player, it's not a coach, but the industry itself is ripe with controversy right now. Baseball's biggest star in the U.S. and the biggest star worldwide, the Michael Jordan of baseball, is caught up in a federal investigation that outed him for paying millions for his, according to him, addicted interpreter. A Toronto Raptors player, an absolute moron on every level, named Jonte Porter. I mean, this guy is shockingly stupid. But he had made several prop bets taking the under for his own scoring in games on three-point shooting and scoring, and he hit the under each time. He's now under investigation. I would suggest that if, when we find out he was actually doing it, which seems pretty easy to do, that, you kick him out of the game for good. Last year, I guess it was several Iowa State football players were busted for making bets on college football games. Now, they were busted because they were using illegal accounts. They were fraudulently using their mom as their name on these betting accounts. That's a crime. 3 NFL players, maybe 4 NFL players actually, suspended for making small bets at their team's facility in Indianapolis. How about the Alabama baseball coach? This wasn't long ago. What a tool this guy is. Alabama baseball coach made a suggestion to a friend or a family member or someone to bet against Alabama. First of all, nobody bets on college baseball, so it's going to be weird to begin with. But I think it was in Indiana where the bets were being made, and he's telling them to make bets against Alabama because he was going to scratch his starting pitcher that night because he had a bad back. That guy's been fired. And there's more. I mean, it doesn't take long to find them, and there's going to be more. They're coming, and they're making news. So, for all this, guess what? Legal betting is booming. Big time. 2023, it's reported legalized betting generated more than $10.9 billion. Legal. $10.9 billion. That's 38 states. It's a 45% increase. Now, that number is going to be even bigger, obviously, in 2024. Think about what that number would be if Texas and California legalized. So, does this all mean it's a terrible idea? Because I do think people it's going to come up. You know, it's going to come up. And maybe it's going to come up fairly often. And I think maybe some of you today are going to say, you know what, Ward, you're right. I mean, these scandals, I don't know. I mean, this could be the tip of the iceberg. We could be hearing more about these scandals, you know, coaches and players and stuff. And, you know, maybe it's not. For all the Mattress Mac jokes you want to crack about Mattress Mac going across state lines and betting and winning or betting and losing, now you're talking about players and coaches involved, and it's making news, and I think it's going to make people wonder if this is not a terrible idea. I mean, the money generated is unbelievable. I mean, almost $11 billion, and that's not counting Texas and California. Legal. So look at the problems, though. That's what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, I mean, look at the problems it's creating. It's a terrible idea. There's no way the state of Texas should go here, I think a lot of people are going to say. Now, the state of Texas should go here, I think. And I think sports betting is legalized before. We could argue about this, but I think it's probably true. Legalized sports betting in the state of Texas will be voted in before recreational marijuana. Now, you can make an easy argument. I would not push back if you said, are you kidding me? Of the two, betting is far more dangerous than recreational marijuana. Of course, you'd be right about that, but that's the way it's going to work. But the emperor of the state of Texas, he hasn't even mentioned these things yet, but I'm sure when there is pushback on the push to get sports betting legalized in Texas, the emperor of the state of Texas, that's Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. He's the emperor. He's not just a moral compass. He's the emperor of the state of Texas. He is in bed with the religious right of the right of the right, okay? And he's going to say no again. And I don't see it happening anytime soon. And I think a lot of you are going to say, well, this is why, Jeff. See, these scandals are the very reason why. This moron for the Toronto Raptors is a perfect example, Jeff, of why we shouldn't go here. It should not be legalized. I completely disagree. In fact, he's the perfect example, even though I don't know the emperor is going to agree. Okay, but he's the perfect example of why I'm going to argue that it should be legalized. I mean, I think all the examples that I've just given, all the examples that you're going to come up with, I think are the exact reason why it should be legalized. Is betting smart? No, it is not. Are there plenty of problems? Yes, absolutely. If you have a moral disagreement with betting, that's fine. Absolutely right on. Don't bet. If you want to say it's a stupid idea, I'm not disagreeing. Don't bet. That's not the issue, though. I know it's going to sound crazy for me to argue, but I don't think that's the issue. The issue is, do you want it above board and legal and regulated? That's the issue. I mean, I know people are going to turn this around and say, again, you can argue no matter what, you could argue legally you have a problem with this, and that is perfectly fine. The issue here is, I'm going to tell you that I think it's smarter that it's legalized than to keep it the way it is. There's less risk when it's legalized than there is when it's not. So you want it above board. Whether you like it or not, agree with it or not, you want it above board. You want it to do exactly what it's doing now. And that is legal companies that want to operate perfectly legally, that don't want to find themselves caught up in scandal, who are flagging fraudulent-like bets or worrisome bets and doing the right thing. That's because it's above board. Do you want a black market that's ripe for corruption? That's where the corruption is. No matter what you think of it morally, that's where the corruption is. That's where the danger is. You want to get into fixing? You want to get into cartels? You want to get into all that stuff? Then keep it black market. You would think we would know. You think we would learn a lesson, you know? I mean, again, not to say it's smart. I mean, the cheeseburgers are stupid, but we don't regulate that. God knows we don't. And morally, it's a perfectly fine argument against. But people are going to bet, have been betting. And the fact that these people are getting caught, these sports bets are getting caught and outed, is a healthy thing. It's exactly why it should be above board and legal and regulated. And it is. These companies want to be in business. They don't want to go out of business. So the black market is what should terrify you. Not hearing about these stories should bother you because the betting is going on. The perfect example of the betting is going on is, allegedly, the interpreter of baseball's biggest star is betting with some shady dude out of a garage. That's when you start getting fixing. So the issue as it relates to sports and fixing, because you're going to say, well, Jeff, this guy for the Raptors, in the last couple of days, we've learned about this stupid player for the Raptors. There's a perfect example of a guy fixing it. Not really. No. I mean, he's getting caught. He's getting caught almost instantly because it's legal. And he'll be run out of the sport forever. And I can tell you exactly why it's a stupid thing to do, because he's not going to make enough money to offset what his salary would have been. So as it relates to the sports themselves and fixing, outside of a few stupid examples like the Toronto guy or the Alabama coach, a player nor a coach is going to throw a game to win a bet. It's not worth it. The greatest risk, now I do think this is an area where people should be concerned, but the greatest risk is going to be college sports. That's what I think. Not the big time professional leagues. The schools and the conferences have to crack down and send a clear message. But people are going to gamble. 22-year-old dudes are going to gamble. And 62-year-old dudes are going to gamble smartly. See, women are just smarter than guys. They're not going to make these stupid mistakes. So it's going to go on. It has been going on for a long time. So you want it out in the open. You want these IP addresses to be flagged. You want legitimate businesses operating exactly the way they are. The black market is dangerous. These businesses are running perfectly fine and doing exactly what they should do. I mean, the fact is, we haven't really had that many examples of players doing anything. You got this moron in Toronto. Outside of a couple of NFL players betting on, at the locker room, betting on, over-unders on rushing yards. Think of it this way. The Raptors player, Jonte Porter. Here's a guy set to make, I believe it's like $450,000 each year of the next 2 years. He is probably at league minimum. He's a guy with only a 2-year contract. He's a guy that's, he's going to bounce around and try to make a living. But even in his case, $450,000, he's never going to sniff that kind of money making $10,000 bets. He made one bet and got flagged already. How could he fix a game? He played 4 minutes. But even if he wants to, even if he continues to do what he's doing now, the guy tried to go make some money on his own by betting against himself in scoring, which isn't saying a heck of a lot. He would have maybe made $20,000. That moron couldn't even add up the fact that it's not worth it. So there's no point. The money and the salaries, the money in the industry is far bigger than the money you could make gambling. And they know that. And the fact that this guy got flagged will just tell everybody else that. It's an incredibly healthy process. You may find it immoral, but keeping it where it is, above board, as successful, smart, ethical businesses, whatever moral disagreement you have with betting, that's the way you want it. Certainly in the sports industry, that's the way you want it. If anybody wanted it to be legalized, it should be the sports industry, because it will flag anyone trying to do anything that's dumb or any game fixing whatsoever. They're going to get flagged. Everybody so far has gotten caught. Isn't that what you want? Or you prefer the black market? No matter what you think of gambling, you should want it out in the open. And the only way to make it open, the only way to bust people like these stories that have already come out in the last 10 days, the only way to bust them is for it to be perfectly legal.